They don't come with warning labels. Sometimes, they smile the brightest. They laugh the loudest. They seem like everyone's favorite person in the room. But beneath the surface, hidden behind compliments, carefully crafted empathy, and just enough attention to feel seen, is a different story. You don't realize it right away. At first, they're charming, helpful, even. But slowly, something inside you starts to decay. You begin second-guessing yourself. You feel drained after every interaction, as if your soul is quietly leaking out. You walk away from conversations, unsure of what just happened, confused, but blaming yourself. Their presence lingers like a shadow long after they leave. Toxic people are not always villains in obvious costumes. Some are close friends. Some are family. Some sleep in your bed. And the most dangerous thing about them isn't their volume or violence, sits their subtle, relentless erosion of your soul. And before you even know it, you've lost the most sacred thing you own, your peace. This is where Stoicism enters, not as a cold shield to shut the world out, but as a flaming sword to help you cut through the fog. Imagine this, your mind as a fortress perched above the world. Not just any fortress, a masterpiece, carved from discipline, self-awareness, and stillness. But like any great stronghold, it needs a watchman. Someone at the gate. Someone who decides who gets in and who must be turned away. Most people never become that watchman. They leave their gates wide open. Every critic, manipulator, or energy drainer is welcome. And they wonder why their inner world is chaos. You don't have to be one of them. You can become the master of your mind. But first, you have to see the enemy clearly. Toxic people aren't always loud. In fact, the most damaging ones often wear masks. They might flatter you just enough to keep you attached. They might guilt you into staying silent. They might constantly criticize but then say they were just joking. They thrive in ambiguity. Their power lives in your confusion. That's why clarity is your first weapon, not confrontation, not revenge. Clarity. Sofia, a young designer in Portland, used to think her team lead was just under stress. He'd belittle her work in meetings, make subtle jabs about her appearance, and then follow it up with casual jokes. For months, she tolerated it, until she started journaling after work and saw the pattern. Every interaction left her smaller. That realization shattered the illusion. He wasn't under pressure. He was feeding on power. Awareness is armor. When you can name the behavior, it loses its mystique. The gaslighter becomes a manipulator. The constant victim becomes an emotional black hole. The overbearing helper becomes a controller. And once you see E2 can begin to stop it. But Stoicism goes deeper. It teaches you to separate what's happening from what you believe about it. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That means their words don't control you. Their chaos isn't yours. Unless you open the gate, the enemy doesn't just knock. They test your boundaries with every interaction. They look for cracks. They listen for weakness. And when you give them space, they expand. But you have the power to fortify. You can learn to step back emotionally, to see patterns, to name them, to remember their poison doesn't define your identity. Their behavior is a mirror of their inner warren, yours. So here's the invitation. What if, starting today, you became the watchman at your gate? What if you stopped blaming yourself for the damage they do? What if you chose clarity over confusion? Strength over guilt, and freedom over people-pleasing? This video is your map, and your fortress. It's waiting to be protected. If that message hits you deep in the chest, like truth often does, subscribe to the channel. Support this journey, because the more people who reclaim their peace, the stronger we all become. And this is just the beginning. Now, let's build your fortress together. Mini quiz. Let's put it into practice. You just spent time with someone who constantly talks over you, interrupts your ideas, and then brushes it off like it's no big deal. Afterward, You feel deflated. What's the best first step? A. Confront them immediately and demand respect. B. Observe and reflect, track the pattern before taking action. Comment below with A or B and tell me why you chose it. Let's get the conversation going. There comes a moment when you realize the quiet bleeding has to stop. When the guilt for saying no longer outweighs the exhaustion of always saying yes. When the pain of tolerating someone's disrespect finally becomes louder than the fear of disappointing them. That moment is the beginning of boundary building, and it's one of the most sacred acts of self-respect you'll ever commit to. Jaden knows this moment well, living in San Diego, juggling life as a military spouse, solo parenting during long deployments, and managing work from home. Jaden was stretched thin, but what broke her wasn't the responsibilities, it was her sister's constant emotional invasions. Daily phone calls filled with judgment, unsolicited advice masked as concern, guilt trips layered in the language of love. Jaden used to pick up every call, respond to every passive-aggressive message. She told herself, that's just how she is, and I shouldn't push her away. But the truth was simple. She had no boundaries. Her peace was wide open, and anyone could walk in, muddy shoes and all. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They are the doors you choose to close, and the ones you choose to open with care. Stoicism teaches that nothing truly belongs to us except our own mind, our own choices. What we allow, what we protect, what we invite in, that is our responsibility. So how do we rebuild the walls of our inner world? Not from fear, but from clarity. It begins with defining your sacred space, not metaphorically, literally. Out a journal. List the people who leave you energized after interaction, then list those who leave you tense, tired, or confused. Look at your calendar. Where are your hours leaking? Who texts you only when they need something? Who questions your worth with a smile? Next, write down how you want to feel in your life. Grounded, focused, peaceful, respected. Use those words as filters. Any person, task, or conversation that repeatedly violates those states needs a boundary. Then comes the hard part: communication. Most people assume boundaries are about confrontation. They're not. They're about clarity. Jaden didn't scream at her sister. She didn't start a war. She simply shifted. Hey, I need to focus more on my own energy. I won't always be available to chat during the week, but let's catch up on Sunday. At first, her sister resisted. The guilt messages doubled. The accusations of being selfish arrived. But Jaden stayed consistent. She repeated her boundary kindly, calmly, like a quiet drumbeat. Eventually, her sister adjusted or at least quieted. This is what Stoic philosopher Epictetus meant when he said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Boundaries are how you train your mind not to be complicit. They are your refusal to be manipulated, not with anger, with stillness. And sometimes, the most powerful boundary isn't what you say, it's what you no longer respond to. There is power in not replying to every message. There is power in letting a phone ring. There is immense power in choosing stillness over explanation. Not everything deserves your defense. You must also learn to protect your digital space. Unfollow accounts that trigger shame, outrage, or comparison. Mute conversations that spiral into drama. Declutter your feed the same way you would declutter your home. Your attention is currency. Stop spending it on chaos. Over time, you'll notice something extraordinary. You start breathing deeper, sleeping better, thinking clearer. Because every time you honor your boundaries, you teach your nervous system, I am safe. I am in charge. I protect myself now. That's the shift. From reactive to intentional. From guilt to groundedness. And it's not a one-time fix. Boundaries are not a fence you build and walk away from. They're a living system. They need tending, reinforcement, adjustment. Some will hold. Some will be tested. But each one is a declaration of your self-worth. Jaden now has her Sunday chats with her sister, but they're on her terms, in her time, without obligation. And that single shift has changed everything. You get to do that, too. Rebuilding your boundaries isn't about who you shut out, it's about who you become in the process. Someone who refuses to abandon themselves. Someone who protects their peace with both grace and fire. Someone who lives not in reaction to others, but in alignment with their own values. This is your fortress. Build it with intention and guard it with love. You can care deeply without drowning. You can love someone and still protect yourself. And perhaps most importantly, you can choose not to engage in someone's chaos without becoming cold or cruel. This is the delicate art of disconnection, and it's one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. Renee, a trauma nurse in Atlanta, lives in a world where human suffering is a daily companion. She's held the hands of the dying, comforted families in crisis, and witnessed emotional devastation most people couldn't imagine. Early in her career, she carried every heartbreak home. She absorbed everything, the grief, the anger, the helplessness, and it began to erode her. But over time, Renee learned that feeling everything wasn't compassion, it was collapse. She began practicing what she called boundary empathy, not a wall, but a filter, a conscious choice to witness pain, to honor it, and to respond with presence without letting it consume her. Detachment became the bridge between her humanity and her own survival. This is not just true in emergency rooms. It's true in families, friendships, relationships where emotional toxicity lurks beneath the surface. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't teach us to stop caring. They taught us to stop sacrificing ourselves on altars we didn't build. To detach is to say, I see your pain, but I don't have to absorb it to acknowledge it. I can be with you, without becoming you. We often think that to love someone means to suffer alongside them. That real compassion means entangling ourselves in their trauma. But Stoic compassion is different. It's grounded, centered, clear. It's choosing to support someone without being swallowed by their storms. There's a difference between connection and codependency, between helping and enabling, between being present and being consumed. Seeing the human behind the toxicity is a powerful act of clarity. It softens our anger without softening our boundaries. When someone lashes out, manipulates, or controls, it usually says more about their pain than it does about your worth. That doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does give you the ability to respond with wisdom instead of reactivity. The question isn't what's wrong with them, it's what might have happened to them. This reframing changes your entire posture, from defense to distance, from attack to awareness. Luis, the teacher from Miami, began doing this with his brother. After years of tension, he realized something profound. His brother's cutting remarks weren't about Luis. They were about a lifetime of feeling unseen, unheard, unhealed. Luis stopped trying to win, stopped trying to fix. He just showed up kind, but immovable, present, but protected. That's what detachment looks like in practice. You stop trying to rewrite their story. You accept the character they've chosen to play, and you stop auditioning for roles you were never meant to fill. This doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you love wisely. You give without depletion. You show compassion without martyrdom. And you finally understand that you are not responsible for someone else's refusal to heal. There's an incredible freedom that comes from letting go of the idea that you must save everyone. You can point them to the light without dragging them to it. You can offer a hand, but not your entire self. Think of it like standing on a riverbank. You see someone struggling in the current. You call out, you toss a rope, you offer guidance. But if they insist on pulling you in with them, you have to choose, both of you drowning, or one of you staying steady. The Stoics would choose steadiness every time, not out of selfishness, but out of clarity. And sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their dysfunction. To stop pretending their behavior is acceptable. To stop shrinking yourself so they don't feel uncomfortable. True love doesn't require self-abandonment. Detachment is the soul's way of saying, I deserve peace, too. Renee still cries sometimes, still feels, still loves fiercely. But now, she also breathes deeper. She recovers faster. She doesn't carry what's not hers to carry, and that makes her presence even more powerful. You don't have to become numb to be strong. You don't have to disconnect to protect yourself. You simply need to reclaim the right to your own emotional space. That is the kind of strength the world desperately needs more of, not more reactors, but more responders. Not more coldness, but more clarity. Not more noise, but more grounded love. Detach not to escape humanity, but to return to it whole. You can care deeply without drowning. You can love someone and still protect yourself. And perhaps, most importantly, you can choose not to engage in someone's chaos without becoming cold or cruel. This is the delicate art of disconnection, and it's one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. Renee, a trauma nurse in Atlanta, lives in a world where human suffering is a daily companion. She's held the hands of the dying, comforted families in crisis, and witnessed emotional devastation most people couldn't imagine. Early in her career, she carried every heartbreak home. She absorbed everything, the grief, the anger, the helplessness, and it began to erode her. But over time, Renee learned that feeling everything wasn't compassion. It was collapse. She began practicing what she called boundary empathy. Not a wall, but a filter. A conscious choice to witness pain, to honor it, and to respond with presence without letting it consume her. Detachment became the bridge between her humanity and her own survival. This is not just true in emergency rooms. It's true in families, friendships, relationships where emotional toxicity lurks beneath the surface. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't teach us to stop caring. They taught us to stop sacrificing ourselves on altars we didn't build. To detach is to say, I see your pain, but I don't have to absorb it to acknowledge it. I can be with you without becoming you. We often think that to love someone means to suffer alongside them. That real compassion means entangling ourselves in their trauma. But Stoic compassion is different. It's grounded, centered, clear. It's choosing to support someone without being swallowed by their storms. There's a difference between connection and codependency, between helping and enabling, between being present and being consumed. Seeing the human behind the toxicity is a powerful act of clarity. It softens our anger without softening our boundaries. When someone lashes out, manipulates, or controls, it usually says more about their pain than it does about your worth. That doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does give you the ability to respond with wisdom instead of reactivity. The question isn't what's wrong with them, it's what might have happened to them. This reframing changes your entire posture, from defense to distance, from attack to awareness. Luis, the teacher from Miami, began doing this with his brother. After years of tension, he realized something profound. His brother's cutting remarks weren't about Luis. They were about a lifetime of feeling unseen, unheard, unhealed. Luis stopped trying to win, stopped trying to fix. He just showed up, kind, but immovable, present, but protected. That's what detachment looks like in practice. You stop trying to rewrite their story. You accept the character they've chosen to play, and you stop auditioning for roles you were never meant to fill. This doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you love wisely. You give without depletion. You show compassion without martyrdom, and you finally understand that you are not responsible for someone else's refusal to heal. There's an incredible freedom that comes from letting go of the idea that you must save everyone. You can point them to the light without dragging them to it. You can offer a hand, but not your entire self. Think of it like standing on a riverbank. You see someone struggling in the current. You call out. You toss a rope. You offer guidance. But if they insist on pulling you in with them, you have to choose. Both of you drowning, or one of you staying steady. The Stoics would choose steadiness every time. Not out of selfishness, but out of clarity. And sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their dysfunction, to stop pretending their behavior is acceptable, to stop shrinking yourself so they don't feel uncomfortable. True love doesn't require self-abandonment. Detachment is the soul's way of saying, I deserve peace, too. Renee still cries sometimes, still feels, still loves fiercely. But now, she also breathes deeper. She recovers faster. She doesn't carry what's not hers to carry. And that makes her presence even more powerful. You don't have to become numb to be strong. You don't have to disconnect to protect yourself. You simply need to reclaim the right to your own emotional space. That is the kind of strength the world desperately needs. More of not more reactors, but more responders. Not more coldness, but more clarity. Not more noise, but more grounded love. Detached not to escape humanity, but to return to it whole. Some people protect their money, others guard their time. But those who understand the true cost of energy, those who have been emotionally drained, spiritually exhausted, pushed past the edge of burnout, they learn to protect something far more sacred, their life force, the quiet, invisible current that fuels every thought, every word, every boundary, every dream. To guard that kind of energy, you must become both warrior and priest, fierce in protection, reverent in purpose. Devon, a startup founder in Boston, used to run on overdrive. His calendar was a battlefield, meeting stacked back to back, emails flooding his inbox, social expectations woven into every free moment. He was successful, visible, admired, but he was also hollow. He couldn't remember the last time he laughed without checking his phone, or sat in silence without reaching for something to fill it. Then came the collapse, a panic attack in the middle of a team pitch, hands trembling, chest tight, mind spiraling. It was the moment his nervous system declared a state of emergency. His body was keeping score. His soul was calling for a ceasefire. That breakdown became his initiation. From that day forward, Devon began to see his energy not as something infinite or expendable, but as sacred. And he started building rituals, not just routines. He called it soul maintenance. It wasn't about self-care trends or temporary relief. It was about reclaiming his emotional territory and defending it like sacred ground. The Stoics believed in daily rituals as a way to anchor the mind and soul. Not performance but presence. Devon's rituals were simple but consistent. 15 minutes of sunlight every morning, an hour each week for something joyfully unproductive. He reintroduced laughter as a healing practice. He started hiking again. He reconnected with music, with slow dinners, with silence, and most importantly, he began auditing his relationships with brutal honesty. He asked, who adds to my peace? Who quietly takes from it? Not everyone had to go, but everyone had to be seen clearly. Clarity is a form of protection. When you see who and what drains you, you stop being caught off guard. Protecting your energy isn't about isolating yourself. It's about curating your environment with the same care you'd give to a sanctuary. You don't allow just anyone to storm through a temple. You don't let chaos sit at your altar. You create a life that is compatible with your nervous system, not a life that constantly fights against it. One of the greatest tools in your arsenal is the power to retreat, not to run, not to give up, but to strategically withdraw when the battle is not worth your spirit. Toxic people often escalate when you set limits. They test you, they provoke, but your withdrawal is not weakness, it is wisdom. You are no longer accessible to every crisis. You do not owe your energy to every storm. That means learning the art of the slow fade. Not every departure requires a dramatic scene. Sometimes, You simply reply less, engage less, say no more often. You don't announce it. You just begin reclaiming your time, your mental bandwidth, your peace. That energy you save, you reinvest it into your life's deeper callings, into the friendships that nourish you, into your physical body, into your spiritual growth, into the joy you thought you lost. And most powerful of all, you begin building your Stoic circle, your chosen tribe of light bearers and truth speakers. Not perfect people, but intentional ones. People like Renee in Atlanta, who show up grounded, like Jaden in San Diego, who value quiet over drama, like Luis in Miami, who protect peace with presence. People who challenge you gently, listen without fixing, and celebrate your boundaries instead of testing them. Devon now surrounds himself with these kinds of people. Not many, just enough. A strong inner circle is not about quantity, it's about quality. It's the armor you wear that doesn't look like armor. It's the reason your spirit feels lighter after you've been in their presence. Protecting your energy is not something you do once. It's a daily devotion, a sacred act. It requires honesty, discipline, and the courage to make unpopular choices. But what you gain in return is a life that's no longer dictated by emotional survival. It's a life powered by clarity, vitality, and deep, unshakable peace. That is what it means to live like a warrior priest, fierce in your boundaries, soft in your heart, unapologetic about your joy, and ready to meet life not from depletion, but from overflow. There comes a moment on the path to healing when you stop fighting, not because you've lost, but because you finally understand that peace is not won in battle. It is chosen, it is claimed, and often it is claimed through the most misunderstood of all virtues, forgiveness, not for them, for you. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean inviting someone back into your life. It doesn't mean pretending the damage never happened or that your pain wasn't real. Forgiveness means this: I choose to stop carrying what you did. I choose to stop letting your darkness bleed into my light. I choose me over the memory of you. Devon, the founder from Boston, once described it like this: it felt like I was dragging an anchor across a field. Every step forward in my life was harder than it had to be. And one day, I realized I was the one holding the rope. That rope was resentment. And for years, it had become his identity. We all carry our versions of that weight. Some of it is from people who were careless with our hearts. Some of it from those who knew better, but chose harm anyway. And some of it, perhaps the heaviest, is the guilt we carry for allowing it. Forgiveness begins with self. Renee, the trauma nurse from Atlanta, used to torture herself for not walking away sooner from someone who drained her for years. I should have known better, she'd whisper to herself. But the truth is, we only know what we're ready to face. And strength doesn't come from perfection, comes from reflection. She wrote a letter to her past self one day. She didn't send it. She didn't even keep it. She wrote it, wept over it, and burned it in her fireplace. Watching the flame rise, she whispered, "I forgive you. You were surviving." There is something holy in that act. Because when we forgive ourselves, we reclaim every version of us that was lost in survival. The younger version who needed love. The confused version who stayed too long. The angry version who lashed out. The quiet version who said nothing. They were all doing their best. And now, it's your turn to lead them out of the pain. And only then can we release the hold others have on us. Luis in Miami never got an apology from his brother. Never got acknowledgement. But one evening, after a long walk near the ocean, he paused, closed his eyes, and said aloud, "You don't get to live in my mind rent-free anymore." Forgiveness doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes, it's just a moment, a deep breath, a surrender. Not to them, but to life, to yourself, to the possibility of joy returning. You don't need closure to forgive. That's one of the hardest truths. Closure as we imagine it, is often a myth. What we really crave is understanding. What we really want is validation. But most toxic people will never give you either, because doing so would require them to confront the very parts of themselves they spent a lifetime avoiding. So we stop waiting. We stop needing them to give us what they never could. We stop handing our peace to people who wouldn't even recognize its value. We take the final step alone, not in loneliness, but in liberation. Forgiveness is not a finish line. It's a door. When you step through it, you find everything you thought was lost. Your breath, your clarity, your laughter, your joy. You realize it wasn't gone. It was just buried under everything you were still holding. Devon said it best. After letting go of his resentment, I didn't just forgive, I made space. And that space became my peace. And maybe that's the most sacred part of it, all realizing that freedom was never something they could give you. It was yours to choose all along. So today, as you stand at the end of this path, this journey of reclaiming your mind, your boundaries, your silence, your energy, there's one final act left. Forgive. Forgive not because they deserve it. Forgive because you deserve freedom. Forgive because you are tired of living in the past. Forgive because you are finally ready to live forward. Let the weight go. Let the anchor drop. Let your soul rise. Because the most powerful revenge is not anger, it's healing. It's waking up and realizing you're not bitter anymore. You're not waiting for them to fix it. You're not tethered to the wound. You are free. And that, more than anything, is the final release. When you trace the thread through each story, Sofia in Portland reclaiming her clarity, Jaden in San Diego rising through compassionate boundaries, Luis in Miami transforming reactivity into stillness, Renee in Atlanta practicing sacred detachment, Devon in Boston rebuilding his life from spiritual burnout. You see, not just isolated struggles, but a shared awakening. These are not just individual battles with toxic people. These are universal human experiences with pain, confusion, endurance, and finally, resilience. Their journeys may have started with doubt, but they end in sovereignty. Each one of them reached a point where surviving wasn't enough anymore. They wanted to live, to breathe, to love, without condition but also without self-abandonment. And that meant change. That meant courage. That meant learning to stand still while everything around them pushed for reaction. That meant walking away, not with bitterness, but with grace. Sofia stopped apologizing for someone else's behavior and started listening to her own intuition. She used her clarity like a lantern in the fog of manipulation. Jaden stopped playing peacekeeper at the expense of her mental health. She started treating her energy as a sacred space, not public property. Luis chose to stop trying to win arguments with someone who never fought fair. He mastered the art of stimisa, quiet resistance more powerful than words. Renee showed us that you can be surrounded by human pain and still not lose your center. Her ability to detach without disconnecting is a lesson we all need in a world that constantly pulls at our empathy. And Devon the warrior priest proved that rock bottom can be the most honest place to begin again. He redesigned his life to reflect his values, not his obligations. He now protects his joy, like a discipline. So what's the thread that ties them together? It's this: the understanding that peace is not passive. It's an act of rebellion. To stay calm in chaos. To hold your ground in the face of guilt. To forgive, not because they earned it, but because you're no longer interested in being chained to the past. That's the Stoic way. Not cold, but clear. Not distant, but discerning. Not heartless, but rooted in a heart so full that it no longer bends for empty drama. These characters, these real people chose to become the architects of their inner citadel, and in doing so, they built lives that no longer revolve around avoiding pain, but instead radiate purpose. The lesson: you can't change people. You can't control the chaos of the world, but you can master your response. You can choose what enters your mental gates. you can become the guardian of your own peace. This isn't just philosophy, it's survival. In a world where noise is constant, boundaries are blurred, and emotional manipulation often hides behind charm. This way of living is nothing short of revolutionary. So how do you apply this to your life? Start by noticing. Who leaves you feeling light? Who makes you shrink? What conversations linger too long in your mind? That awareness is your first tool. From there, start practicing boundaries not with aggression, but with clarity. Say no when it costs you your peace. Say yes to things that nourish your joy. Carve out rituals, whether it's a walk at sunrise, 5 minutes of silence before sleep, or simply turning your phone off while you eat. These moments become the foundation of your inner world. They remind you that your time, your energy, your attention are not infinite. They are sacred. And finally, when it's time, let go. Let go of the need for them to understand. Let go of the fantasy that one day they'll change. Let go of the guilt that kept you tied to suffering. Not because it didn't matter, but because you matter more. Now I want to hear from you. Which part of this story spoke to you most? Was it Sofia's quiet awakening? Jaden's bold boundaries? Luce's emotional control? Renee's grounded compassion? Devon's soul-deep rebuild? Comment below with your answer or share your own experience. Let's make the comment section a place of wisdom, not just reaction. Let others learn from your insight, your struggle, your strength. And if this video resonated with you, if it felt like a mirror, or a wake-up call, or a warm reminder that you are not alone, then please subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. It fuels the mission to keep sharing content that lifts, teaches, and empowers. This was just one story. Yours is still unfolding, but you don't have to walk it alone. We're building a community here, a circle of warriors, seekers, survivors, and, now, peacekeepers. Subscribe, comment, share your light, and always remember your peace is worth protecting.